During this training, I've seen the power of stories that push boundaries, speak of possibilities, fire the imagination, and do so with this sense of responsibility and seriousness, and also wonder at the depth of how we are entangled in the very things we want to change. By thinking through what does Earth Others means, it's helped me to reimagine ourselves ecologically, decentering the human and the views of nature from a Western scientific perspective, as I'm trying to link environmentalism and social justice and try to rethink my connections, our connections, with the world of animals, plants, and minerals. So for me, this sort of central trouble is how to decenter our own stories from the anthropocentric, capitalocentric, Eurocentric, hegemonic worldviews, while at the same time, we're still using that same language, which has shaped those ways of thinking. We take into account the embodied, the intimate, the emotional, the otherwise stories of communities and the ways in which socio-natures are being transformed.
How do I understand feminist political ecology? I understand it as a field in constant reinvention, resulting from transdisciplinarity and a dialogue of plural knowledges. It is a theoretical frame that demands a deep epistemological rupture with the dominant academic and social narratives, promoting a concrete change of the capitalist production system through practices, answers, organization processes, planning, and territorial reordering from a communitarian basis and careful relationships.
So I guess it's also interesting, it's also important that FP always intersects with other things for me. It's either with anthropology or critical geography or with STS, decolonial theory, actor network theory, and these multiple standpoints give rise to situated perspectives.
The lens with specific purpose allows me to see something different from general view, like all my view, and to explain what I cannot clearly explain from my view. And the reason why I think feminist political ecology in this way is coming from also situated my subjectivity. I wanted to become forester or lumberjack, but I had a feeling that there's something missing in me. I thought at the beginning that was probably lack of my physical strengths, like being a woman, or not curious enough in a machine processing, or bad memory of crazy Latin tree species name, for example. And but after feminist political ecology and a gender perspective clearly showed up in my life, I realized that it was not my incompetence.
Gender inequalities and disparities and the need to identify as a feminist. Although that was not the case from the onset when I started the project because of cultural reasons. And sometimes identifying as a feminist would actually prove to be unhelpful. When the pandemic started happening and there were reports that the ethnic minorities and women are being disproportionately affected by the pandemic, especially in the global north countries. Then we had the Black Lives Matter protest in various parts of the world. And then locally, we also have an increase in femicides and gender-based violence. So with all these things happening, I find it necessary to take a stand as a and be vocal as a feminist, as somebody who believes in gender equality.
My sort of relationship with FPE was as an umbrella, holding the handle of the umbrella with lots of other people who shared my kinds of interests, ideas. Feminist political ecology. Do we need that phrase, or is the kind of work that we're doing better captured with other kinds of terminologies? And what kinds of purposes do those terminologies have for us? And that's been a kind of question that I think, going back to Andrea's point about the we and the I, is something maybe you can only resolve for yourself and the kinds of networks that you're in. We are a network, but we're all also entangled in all sorts of other networks. So in a very sort of practical sense, I think that's important.
I feel are important for my own, what might be considered FPE grapplings. So the metaphor that's been resonating very powerfully for me in recent days and weeks is breathing. And this metaphor and bodily reality has been expressed in various ways. The right to breathe, I can't breathe, the gasping for breath, and the respiratory death from COVID-19. So the metaphor of breath and breathing, I think, is really relevant and can make apparent the intersectional connections that I think an FPE approach to engage research calls for. Many EJ activists who I have worked with over the years have grounded their struggles in demanding the right to breathe. And I think this metaphorical and bodily right to breathe emerges for Indigenous communities in terms of how their rights to breathe have been obliterated through historical and ongoing forms of colonialism and dispossession. So this disproportionate impact of the pandemic reveals what many have referred to as the pre-existing conditions of racism.
So you have a river that's dotted with communities, with villages, with shrines, with artifacts, with boats, with crops. It flows through diverse landscapes and ecologies, and all of them mean different things to different people. The river can be sacred, it's cultural. Some others see it as flowing waste to the sea, so we have to dam it. Others see it as a source of mining or extraction. So I guess for me, the PE and FPE lens has been to look at the multiple meanings of resources, the cultural, the symbolic, the economic, the questions of identities that are linked, ethnicities, and also the links to wider political economy and across different scales. But these are also sites of injustice. So we're talking about very unequal gains and pains that come out of infrastructure and projects across these resources or rivers. So I guess the FPE lens for me allows me to look at these multiple ontologies, knowledges, injustices across scales, and also to make visible what is often invisible. For me, FPE is about unpacking and analyzing unequal gender, power, and social relations. So discourses and practices can be hegemonic, and these are usually gendered. So unraveling these discourses, these processes of domination through a feminist lens and gender analysis is for me the real strength. Also denaturalizing the invisibility of certain practices and narratives through a gender and feminist lens, to provide more socially just and ecologically just pathways.
I really liked Mai's metaphor of FP being a boat, and you are on a boat in the river, and then you cannot swim, so the boat forces you to stay with the trouble, and to look at the world from a different perspective, which is the river. So this is was one thing. And then Gulay said, yeah, like FP is more like an umbrella. So I was looking at FP both as a boat and as an umbrella, being something that encompassed really multiple ways of looking at things, of having a not hierarchical way of embracing and trying to understand knowledge production, but also something that gives us a space to feel comfortable with diversity and with different ways of telling stories and interpreting and being creative.